My name is David Shaywitz, and I'm the Chief Medical Officer of DNA Nexus, which is a health data management company, a cloud company that's headquartered in Silicon Valley with offices in San Francisco, Boston, and presence in Asia, the UK, Texas. I always feel like when people tell their stories, they tell it with this sort of incredible narrative to it, the sort of inevitability, like life began here and ended here, and there's this sort of inexorable path to where one is going. And I think there's so much uncertainty and so many changes and so much where you're going to do one thing and then something else happens, and it's hard to sort of always appreciate that. And I feel this so strongly that there isn't, here's your life trajectory and you have to stay on this track. And in fact, I think some of the best things that happen to all of us are when something comes up, when life happens, as they say. So I think for a lot of it, things that I did, they were, sort of a kind of very academic path. I grew up in a household of, both my folks are academics. I was always puzzled, well, how do you go from the science into the application? This guy looks very familiar. How are you doing, Mark? How are you? Great to see you.
I noticed that the tip signs were out.
Yeah.
And I figured, well, the intellectual lights have gone up a range. And I knew that David Shaywitz might be on campus because the glare was so much.
All right, give me a second here.
So now, the funny thing is now, if you really want to talk about something interesting, okay? All this tip stuff is lovely. You should ask him about his car restoration project. I'm actually serious, right?
Well, actually, have you been sneaking on my website? To talk about David here, when I heard that you were in town, and this was a setup, I started thinking, okay, what can I recall from 30-some years ago?
Should my daughter cover her ears?
And,
Now she's listening. You found a way to get her to look up from Subway Surfers. She's riveted.
This is actually wonderful for you because, your parents are always trying to tell you how wonderful they are, but they don't have a graceful way of doing that. So it's good to hear, and Cicero said this in his rhetoric, it's always good to have somebody else praise you. So I'm going to praise your father. So don't let him get a big head, okay? Anyway, I was having trouble trying to remember what the syllabus was. We did Gawain. There was Sir David Lindsay. Do you remember that?
I'm sure somewhere.
Oh. David, you must remember this. The shadow of that hideous strength, 6 miles and more, it was of length. It was that was a 16th or 17th century excerpt from a poem by an inconsequential poet in England.
What? Then used by C.S. Lewis, right?
Yes. He took a phrase out of that poem and turned it into That Hideous Strength, which was the second, I think, or the third book in his space trilogy. And then we did Mark Twain, Connecticut Yankee, T.H. White's Once and Future King. I have a wonderful memory of that.
Oh, that's great.
So, and then I think we kind of got off the rails and didn't do Arthur anymore, but we did Star Wars because I thought it was cool.
Well, what I remember, it was totally cool, and what I remember, but then there was this question of what is the thematic, like the linking thematic element, because there was some elements of what makes an epic, something like that, but what is the unifying theme? And we came up with it was the music.
Yep.
Do you remember that? That still stuck with me. To have here a couple of weeks in the summer and to have the imprint be with someone for the rest of their lives is pretty profound.
There is this immediacy to the joy of teaching, and we often don't see the impacts that we might have had in sort of shaping the arc of people's lives. And that's another great thing about having David Shaywitz come to Duke, because it allows me to see, well, I didn't screw up too badly.